Thank you to my dear Jackie. And I'm going to break up because also thank you to all those women I've talked to in the last 24 hours who I know are my sister warriors who have been fighting this fight for decades. And at 74, I'm running out of runway. So we've got to work fast and work hard and keep this going. First, though, I want to ask how many aunts or aunts do we have in the audience? Yes. Ooh, whoops, almost forgot. And how many moms? Sisters? Grandmothers? Okay. Ladies, I'm happy you're here. And uncles? We've got some uncles. Dads? I know we have dads sitting right there. All right, I started and asked that question because I need to know who's here. First of all, I do want to say, aunts or aunts, whoever you are the great unrecognized powerhouse in America. And I just want to tell you, I know you're here. Usually, I am introduced and people think I'm going to talk about money and kids, and I am. But I'm also here to talk about you all, the aunts, the mothers, the aunts, the uncles, the dads, those of you who are raising kids, and those of you who once were kids. This is the way most of us grew up. You know, none of us really had any kind of financial education. For a long time, it wasn't really needed. The financial landscape was pretty simple. You know, you save, you spend, you put some money away. But today, the financial landscape, as you all know, is incredibly complicated. And what happens is we normally don't get any kind of education. And how many here, in fact, have felt that you had some kind of reasonable financial education? Oh man, we're fixing that today. We're just fixing it. Because normally what happens, the usual way, you can see I have up here, is that nobody gets anything. And then that means that when you go into, or your daughter or your niece or whoever goes into the Gap for the first time, and they offer you a 10% discount to get their card, you don't know that you've just signed up for a 24% interest rate to pay off those damn jeans you just bought. And you don't know, indeed, that what else is happening is you are putting yourself on a credit score that you don't know exists, let alone what it does. And so you end up spending a lot of your life feeling embarrassed and ashamed and stupid, and you're not. You just haven't been brought in on the game. And our job is to bring you in on the game. Because once you're in on the game, you're smart enough to play. And that's why you're all here today. You can see that what I'm about these days is changing the game. There was a great feminist song back in the 80s, and I forget now who sang it, but I do know the words were, if we're going to play the game, we're going to change the goddamn rules. And I think one of the reasons I bond with Jackie is nobody's a rule changer like that girl. And so we're here for that. And Rosie, oh my God, Rosie is truly changing the world. But this is the Bounce Way. This is a new venture I'm starting, and I'm bragging about it because I've been working on this sucker for the last 25 years. Finally, we're launching it. But this is what's different, and this is why I want you to go home and think differently. We're starting financial education with children who are 2, 3, and 4 years old. We're starting early because just like learning to read, learning a new language, the earlier you start, the easier it is. You begin to get a kind of normalization of what's going on if it comes at you in a slow, easy way. And it turns out that the earlier you start with your little ones, the more they think this is just the way life goes. If you're sitting there and you think, yeah, that's great, Joline, but I've got a 16-year-old, now what? Well, you know, I'm talking developmental, not chronological. I'm a social worker by training. I'm not a financial advisor. I'd like to have some of that skill, but I don't. But I do understand development. So whether you are 6, 16, or 60, if you start at the beginning, developmentally, it is still not a terrible journey. We can really make this happen. So for those of you who come to my workshop later, we'll talk about how do you make it happen, whether you are 6, 16, or 60. I do want to give you one pass a little bit, and that is part of what happens is that your lives are really full. I've been keeping what I call a change chart since 2012. And in 2012, I started it because I've been a sci-fi nut since I was a kid. And in September of 2012, I opened the New York Times one Sunday, and the headline was Space Tourism. And I turned the page, no big deal, because no big deal, I've been reading about it forever. However, I then turned back because I thought, wait, this is the New York Times Sunday edition, and they're talking about space tourism? And I began to understand that so much of what used to be science fiction is now science fact. And so things are changing. The acceleration of change is such that this little tiny list you see here is just the tip of the iceberg. I think at this point I have about 30 factors I'm paying attention to. And I mention only to say there's a lot you are being asked to manage, a lot you are asked to navigate while you are making money, raising kids, trying to have a life, keeping your weight down, trying to get something to wear that you really like. Life is complicated. And yet I'm still saying to you there are things that we have to do. So I'm going to talk about a few of those strategies. And the first thing I want to tell you is that one thing I know is most of us have an appetite for about 11 months of learning before it's too much. We're on to the next thing. It's just too boring. But I need 11 years of your time, not just 11 months. Happily, I only need 11 months over 11 years. So I'm telling you this just because if you, after a little time of what I will be talking about here, if you give up, don't worry. I need you over 11 years. I just need you in a kind of drip, drip, drip way you're going to see. And so here are some of the ways you're going to learn to become more powerful yourself. The first thing we're going to do is expand the notion of wealth. Money is really important, do not get me wrong, but one of the things we are doing with those 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds is teaching this idea of fish. Now, I use fish because any 5-year-old can remember fish, so surely you all can too. FISH is simply a little acronym for financial, intellectual, social, and human capital. Once you begin to think in that bigger way, you are not hampered by the notion that life is all about money. It is not, as you well know, but it is a critical aspect. And so part of the strategy of financial education in my world is building up our ability to value our intellectual, social, and human capital in ways that are very similar to managing our financial capital. And this is my ABCs portion. Everybody can learn 10 skills, and I loved Jackie's 7, and I thought, wait a minute, how come she's got 7 and I've got 10, and how do we line those up? And I thought, well, there are a couple that I have in there. And one of them you notice is number 5, talk. How to talk about money. You've heard that from everybody. And somehow it's like talking about sex, which is really terribly difficult. And we were all taught by our families, does not do it. It is not done. We're here to talk about it, to get it out there, and make it more fun, more interesting. So, fish, 10 skills, and then the drip, drip, drip. Now, this one is my favorite. It goes back to the 11 years, 11 months formula. So I began to understand a long time ago that people just I didn't really respond to any financial lectures I got from my family, And then one day a dad said to me, I sit my kids down, I read them the Riot Act, I tell them all the things that are important that they should know about spending money and saving, and they nod and they go away, and then 6 months later I have to do it all over again. And I began to understand that the fire hose was not the way to impart your financial wisdom to your children, and it's not even the way to take it in yourself. It is this drip, drip, drip. A little comes in over time. I mean, this is a rainstorm, this particular conference. You're getting a lot here. But I want you to go read the Wall Street Journal once a week, at least. I read it every day. Some days it makes me really cranky. Friends of mine know that this last week there was practically a pornographic ad, and I sent it around, and it was showing up in the Wall Street Journal. But I had to talk and I had to act on it. So reading the Wall Street Journal is a drip in my life. That's part of how I build my own financial knowledge. But there are other things you do. You have a conversation with a mentor, somebody who is knowledgeable in finance and investing. Or you pick up a book, or you go on to one of the sites you've heard spoken about here this morning. Drip, drip, drip this stuff into your life, and don't make it a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just do it. And over time, you will see, slowly but surely, it will sink in. That's your developmental path. And if you can grab a kid, I don't care if it's a nephew, a niece, a friend's child, your own, a stranger on the road. I mean, I was saying to somebody yesterday, I have followed kids out of the Gap store to explain to them what they just did so they don't do it again. So I don't care where you are, but that's your job. Drip, drip, drip. The last thing I will say in terms of the strategies I will talk about in more depth later, but because we're starting with little kids, we decided to capture the vehicle of play. I mean, it just didn't make sense to me that I would bring out spreadsheets for a 4-year-old, And so why would you want a spreadsheet as your first endeavor into financial knowledge? You wouldn't. You'd want to read a great story. There are great financial stories. I don't know how many of you, or if any of you, actually I'm curious, did anybody get a chance to see the play, the Lehman trilogies? Anybody? Oh my God, I was so riveted by that play. And about a month ago, I was in Chicago to see a play that Steppenwolf put on called Purpose. It's a family drama of money. You can take in financial education through the arts in so many ways, and I think the genius, Jackie, of what you've done here is to bring the arts in. It's not just about Excel sheets. It's not just about interest rates. It is the drama of our lives. That's not exactly play for children, I will say. However, we are developing games, toys, books, all kinds of things. There are gentle ways to bring young people into the whole process of what I think of now as the bounce way. So I just want to say thank you for having me here today. Thank you for being brave enough to start this journey. I'm in a place where actually coming here was a little bit sad for me. For many of us, I know, because I've talked with you, who have been at this since the 70s, the early 80s, and we feel like we have taken 3 steps back. But I am energized, jazzed, excited, thrilled, and grateful to be with you all here. And Jackie, again, thank you so much. But think about the bounce way as a new way, a way to take things on in your own style, your own voice, your own way, and make the world different for your daughters, your nieces, your sons, and your nephews and your grandkids. This is the world we have in front of us, and you're the ones who are going to help make it happen. So with that, let me just remind you all all about choice, that we all have choice. So thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. Take care.